She was everything he wanted. Beautiful, intelligent, successful. And he did everything right, or at least what he thought was right. He texted her back within seconds. He rearranged his entire weekend when she mentioned wanting to see him. He complimented her constantly, agreed with everything she said, and made sure she knew exactly how much he liked her. And then she ghosted him. No explanation, no closure, just silence. Meanwhile, his friend, a guy who seemed almost indifferent to women, had 3 different women competing for his attention. What was going on here? Welcome to Brutal Relationship, where we cut through the noise and give you the raw, unfiltered truth about attraction, psychology, and what actually works between men and women. Here's what nobody tells you about attraction. It's not about what you do. It's about what you refuse to do. The men who seem magnetically attractive to women aren't playing some complicated game. They've simply learned to say no to things that most men can't resist. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what those things are. Picture this scenario. You meet someone at a coffee shop. The conversation flows, there's obvious chemistry, and she gives you her number. You're excited. You can barely contain it. So what do? You text her that same night. She responds. Now you're texting back and forth, and every time your phone buzzes, you drop everything to reply. Within a week, she knows your entire schedule because you've made it clear. You're available whenever she wants. Here's the thing most guys don't understand. That availability you think is showing interest. To her subconscious mind, it's signaling something completely different. It's signaling that you have nothing else going on, that she's already the center of your world before she's even earned that position. Now, let me be clear. This isn't about playing games or being manipulative. This is about understanding a fundamental truth of human psychology. We value what we have to work for. Think about it in your own life. The job you had to interview 4 times for, you valued it more than the one that hired you on the spot. The apartment you searched 6 months for feels more like home than one you settled on in a weekend. Attraction works the same way. The smart man understands that his time is genuinely valuable, not as a tactic, but as a reality. He has goals, hobbies, friendships, and a life that existed before she came along and will continue to exist alongside her. When he takes a few hours to respond to a text, it's not because he's following some wait 3 hours rule. It's because he was actually doing something. But here's where it gets interesting. This creates something psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. It's the same principle that makes slot machines addictive. When the reward, in this case your attention, comes unpredictably, it becomes more valuable, not less. Her brain literally releases more dopamine when she doesn't know exactly when you'll respond. There's another layer to this that most people miss entirely. When you're always available, you rob her of the chance to miss you. You rob her of the chance to wonder what you're doing. You rob her of the chance to anticipate seeing you again. And those feelings, missing, wondering, anticipating, are the feelings that deepen attraction. Without them, the connection stays surface level no matter how many hours you spend together. So what do? You build a life worth being busy for, not fake busy, actually busy. Pursue that skill you've been putting off. Deepen your friendships. Work on projects that matter to you. When your unavailability is genuine, it doesn't come across as game playing. It comes across as what it is. A man with a full life who's making room for her, not clearing his entire schedule. And that difference, women can sense it from a mile away. Let me paint another picture for you. 2 men are on separate first dates with equally attractive women. The first man carefully monitors her reactions to everything he says. When he mentions his job, he watches her face to see if she's impressed. When he makes a joke, he immediately looks to see if she's laughing. Every opinion he shares is hedged. I don't know, maybe that's just me, as if he's apologizing for having thoughts. By the end of the night he's exhausted from performing, and she's politely uninterested. The second man, he talks about his obscure hobby, building mechanical keyboards, let's say, with genuine enthusiasm, even though he knows most people find it boring. When she disagrees with his take on a movie, he doesn't backpedal. He says, "Really? Tell me why you see it differently," and actually listens. He's not trying to impress her. He's trying to discover if they're actually compatible. Think about that distinction for a moment. Let it sink in. Most men approach dating as an audition. They're trying to figure out what she wants and then become that thing. But here's what they're missing. Women are incredibly attuned to authenticity. Evolution has wired them to be. For thousands of years, women's survival depended on their ability to distinguish between genuine men and those pretending to be something they're not. When you seek approval, you're essentially telling her, "I don't trust that who I am is enough." And if you don't believe you're enough, why should she? Now, let me show you how this actually works in practice. The man who refuses to seek approval isn't arrogant. He's not dismissive of her opinions or disrespectful. He's simply grounded. He has his own perspective, and he's not going to abandon it just because she raised an eyebrow. If she doesn't like his taste in music, that's okay. If she thinks his career choice is unconventional, he doesn't launch into a defensive explanation. He's curious about her perspective without being destabilized by it. This creates what psychologists call frame control. You're not reacting to her reality. You're operating from your own. And paradoxically, this makes her more attracted, not less. Because a man who doesn't need her approval is a man who chose to be with her, not a man who's grateful she's giving him a chance. There's a subtle energy shift that happens when you stop seeking approval. Conversations become lighter. You actually enjoy yourself instead of performing. And she picks up on that enjoyment. She starts wondering why you're so relaxed, so unbothered, so different from other men who seem desperate to impress her. So what do? Start noticing when you're editing yourself to get a positive reaction. Catch yourself when you're about to qualify a statement with, "But I don't know," or "Maybe I'm wrong." Practice expressing opinions without immediately checking her face for approval. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is growth. And here's a subtle shift that changes everything. Instead of thinking, "I hope she likes me," start thinking, "I'm figuring out if I like her." The energy that comes from that mental switch is palpable. Here's where most advice goes wrong. They tell you to not catch feelings, or to be emotionally unavailable. That's garbage advice that creates men who are disconnected and ultimately unfulfilling partners. What I'm talking about is something different. Imagine a ladder. Most men, when they meet a woman they're attracted to, immediately climb to the top. They project an entire future onto her, the relationship, maybe even marriage and kids, before they've even had a real conversation. They're not falling for her. They're falling for the idea of her, for the story they've constructed in their head. The problem? She can feel it. All that projected expectation creates pressure, and pressure kills attraction. It's like trying to hold sand. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips through your fingers. The smart man understands that investment should be earned, not given freely. This doesn't mean being cold or withholding. It means matching your emotional investment to the actual depth of the connection. You've had one good date? Great. That means you're cautiously optimistic, not planning your honeymoon. But wait, there's something deeper happening here. This also protects you. When you overinvest early, you become attached to an outcome. You need her to like you back because you've already put so much emotional currency into this. Now you're operating from a place of scarcity and need, which, you guessed it, she can sense. There's a concept called outcome independence that gets thrown around a lot, usually by guys who don't actually understand it. True outcome independence isn't pretending you don't care. It's genuinely being okay with any result, because your self-worth isn't riding on her approval. You'd prefer it to work out? Sure. But your life doesn't hinge on it. Think about this. The most attractive energy you can bring to a potential relationship is, I'm interested in exploring this, but I'm also complete without it. That's not manipulation. That's emotional health. Here's something else that happens when you refuse to overinvest. You actually see her more clearly. When you're not projecting fantasies onto someone, you can observe who they actually are. You notice red flags you would have ignored. You pick up on compatibility issues early. You make better decisions about who deserves your continued attention and who doesn't. So what do? Practice taking things one step at a time. After a great first date, don't start imagining your life together. Focus on, that was fun. I'd like to see her again and learn more. When you catch yourself fantasizing about the future, gently pull yourself back to the present. What do you actually know about this person? What have they actually shown you? Not what have you projected onto them. Keep other areas of your life in motion. When dating is just one part of your full life, it naturally doesn't consume all your emotional energy. The guy whose entire happiness depends on how a woman responds is the guy who suffocates connection before it can breathe. This one might be the most important, and it's the one most men get completely wrong. Here's a scenario. She cancels on you last minute for the second time. She makes a comment that feels dismissive, maybe disguised as a joke. She takes days to respond to your texts, but expects immediate replies from you. What do most men do? They let it slide. They don't want to seem sensitive or difficult. They tell themselves it's not a big deal. But here's what most people miss. Every time you accept disrespect, you're training her how to treat you, and you're signaling something devastating, that you don't value yourself enough to expect better. Now, refusing to tolerate disrespect doesn't mean exploding in anger. It doesn't mean being confrontational or dramatic. In fact, the most powerful response to disrespect is often the quietest one. It's the man who simply pulls back, not with punishment or spite, but with self-respect. Let me show you how this actually works. She cancels for the second time with a weak excuse. Instead of saying it's okay and immediately offering to reschedule, you say, "No worries. Let me know when your schedule opens up." Then you go live your life. You don't chase. You don't bring it up passive-aggressively. You just continue having standards. What happens next is telling. If she's actually interested, she'll notice the shift and step up. If she doesn't, you've just learned everything you needed to know about where you stand with her. Either way you win, because you maintained your self-respect. Here's the psychological principle at play. Women, all people really, test boundaries. It's not always conscious. But when a boundary is pushed and there's no resistance, respect erodes. When a boundary is calmly but firmly held, respect increases. It's counterintuitive for men who've been taught that being agreeable is attractive. But being a pushover has never been attractive to anyone. There's another dimension to this worth understanding. When you refuse to tolerate disrespect, you're actually giving her something valuable: security. She knows where she stands with you. She knows what you will and won't accept. That clarity, that solidity creates a sense of safety that chaotic, nice guy behavior never can. Women don't want to walk all over you. They want to know they can't. And here's something crucial. This isn't about punishing her or being petty. It's about communicating through your actions that your self-respect is non-negotiable. The man who will accept anything is the man who gets nothing. So what do? First, get clear on your own standards. What treatment is acceptable to you? What isn't? Write it down if you have to. Second, practice the calm boundary hold. No drama. No lengthy explanations. Just action that demonstrates you expect to be treated well. Third, and this is key, be willing to walk away. Not as a threat or a manipulation, but as a genuine option. Because if you're not willing to walk away, you don't have standards, you have suggestions. Now that you see these 4 refusals, you might notice something connecting them. Each one is really about the same core principle, self-worth that doesn't depend on her validation. The man who's always available is seeking validation. The man seeking approval is seeking validation. The man over-investing emotionally is seeking validation. The man tolerating disrespect is so desperate for validation that he'll accept poor treatment just to stay in her orbit. The smart man who attracts women has shifted his source of validation internally. He likes himself. He respects himself. His sense of value doesn't fluctuate based on whether she texts back or laughs at his joke or agrees to a third date. And here's the truth nobody tells you. This isn't a tactic you can fake. Women will see through performed self-confidence in about 30 seconds. The real work, the work that actually transforms your dating life, is building genuine self-worth. That means accomplishing things you're proud of, setting goals and hitting them, developing skills, cultivating friendships, becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to seek validation because he's already found it within himself. That takes time. That takes effort. There's no shortcut. But when you do that work, the refusals I've talked about today become natural. You won't have to try to avoid being always available. You'll actually be busy. You won't have to force yourself not to seek approval. You'll genuinely be secure. You won't have to pretend not to overinvest. You'll have real perspective. You won't have to work up the courage to enforce standards. You'll refuse to tolerate disrespect instinctively. That's the difference between tactics and transformation. Tactics are exhausting and temporary. Transformation is permanent. So here's where I'll leave you with a question to sit with. Which of these 4 things do you struggle with most? And what would it really look like, to refuse it starting tomorrow? Because understanding this content is just the beginning. The men who actually transform their dating lives are the ones who take one insight and implement it, who let it change something real in their behavior, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it means losing opportunities that weren't right for them anyway. Remember, every no to something that diminishes your value is a yes to the kind of connection that's actually worth having. That's what smart men understand. And now, so do you.